my name is Emma Tobias, and today I want to talk about nostalgia and reading. Da 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 da, da 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 da. I recently decided to reread Anna and the French Kiss by Stephanie Perkins, a book that I loved when I was about 17. I thought this would be kind of an entertaining video idea, like reread books that you really liked and then realize that, thanks Hummingbird, and then realize those books were not as great as you once thought they were. LOL. Ruining childhoods. I started doing this video and I realized that I just didn't really like where it was going. My thoughts were a little more serious than the tone of the video started out as, and I didn't really feel like changing the tone of the video, so I thought I would just make a different video. So I want to talk about nostalgia, and I want to talk about it through books, and how nostalgia for me has shaped the way that I think about books. So when I was in high school, that's really when I began reading in any sort of serious capacity. Basically, I never really read growing up. I have an entire video about that. I just wasn't a part of my life. I had reading problems, like cognitively. It wasn't for me. And then when I got into high school is when reading really became a part of my life. I became a junior librarian. I got really excited about reading. And that's when things started to change, and every book I read, for the most part, I really enjoyed because the back catalogs of books that I was going into were really famous, really great, well-loved books, like books that almost everyone likes. Well, not everyone, but a lot of people like. But I was also reading for the first time, and no story really could disappoint me because I was experiencing reading in this way for the first time, which sounds strange for like a lot of people on BookTube because they started reading seriously when they were very young, but for me I was like 14 years old. So, for example, I read Anna the French Kiss when I was about 17, so I really hadn't been reading seriously for very long. It was probably the first like YA contemporary book that I'd ever read. I read a lot of like dystopians because that was the era of the Hunger Games and Divergent and all of that, but Anna the French Kiss was the first like true blue YA contemporary romance I ever read. I went into it and I fell in love. I fell in love with that book. I love Lil and the Boy Next Door, the sequels, whatever, second book in the sort of series. And I also fell in love with that book. It represented, for me, just this idea that romantic comedies, which is my favorite genre of movie, could be in books, and that was really exciting. And at a time when romantic comedies were dying, that was even more exciting for someone who loved rom-coms so much. Now, I was really skeptical to reread this book because I had such nostalgia with this book. For me, it just represented a time when everything was exciting with reading. So when I began to read it, I was confronted with a few things. I was confronted with the fact that the book isn't that good, but I was also confronted with the fact that rereading books as an adult can be kind of a painful experience. Now, the video that I had been making that was tonally not the direction I wanted to go really showed that to me. I thought this would be kind of funny and lighthearted, a way for me to LOL at younger me and the kind of books that I liked, which was kind of demeaning to younger me. But when I was examining the book, I realized that a lot of my feelings about the book as a teenager, not just because of the fact that it was one of the first YA contemporary books I read, but also because I really connected with the main character. I've watched a lot of BookTube videos about Anne the French Kiss, for example, and a lot of people, their main qualm with it, I mean, there's some actual merit to this for sure, is that they don't like the main character. They don't really connect with Anna. They don't enjoy her. They think she's kind of annoying or a bad person or whatever. And rereading it was really interesting because I felt similarly. I thought Anna was really annoying and obnoxious, but I also saw myself in Anna so much as a 17, 16-year-old that I was like, oh man, I was like this a little bit. I was snot-nosed and really entitled and thought she was better than everyone else, but also very insecure. And those are all things that a lot of people, like, that's just part of growing up, but it's also just attributes people have. I thought that was really interesting to confront myself with the fact that this character that I liked so much when I was 16 is a character that I don't like very much as a 23-year-old. And it's a character that not very many people like now in general. So I thought that was super interesting. It made me think about nostalgia in general and how nostalgia has colored so many of my ideas of books, and especially main characters. For example, Fangirl came out when I was a freshman in college. That book is about a freshman in college, and Rainbow Rowell is not a perfect person and has had some problematic depictions in her books for sure. I read Fangirl when I was a freshman in college, and I connected so much with Kath, the main character. I felt her, I understood her, I felt isolated and alone. Kath was isolated and alone. She was a little bit kind of rude to people. I felt like I was a little rude to people, but I didn't see that as a bad thing. I just saw that like, oh, Kath is this way, and she's a cool character, so I connect. But if I read that now, I guarantee you that I would not like Kath very much. I wouldn't really connect with her in the same way that I did when I was 18. And it's also a character that not a lot of people like. Not a lot of people like Kath from Fangirl. So I think it's kind of painful because you're sort of, in some cases, this isn't true for all books, but you can be struck with how much you've changed by just reading a book that you once loved and reading a character that you once connected with. And this is something that I thought about through this entire experience rereading these books. I read it in the French Kiss and I got halfway through Ruby Red. Ruby Red is a much better book. It's written by Kirsten Gier. It's a sci-fi fantasy YA novel. And it's a much better book. But even that main character that I really liked when I was 16, I don't really like as much anymore. And it also made me think about how we think about teenage girls. Teenage girls are put below other people, like in terms of maturity or what they think, you know, people don't see teenage girls as very serious. They think they're kind of this screaming horde of fangirls, whatever you want to call it. And I realized that some of my prejudice against teenage girls, even though I respect and admire so many teenage girls, and I respect and admire teenage girls in general, and I was once a teenage girl, kind of came through. Like, the problematic issues or like the characteristics that I dislike now as a 23-year-old in Kath or Anna or Gwen from Ruby Red, things like being kind of stuck up or pretentious or stubborn or insecure, or things that like a lot of people deal with, but things that kind of struck me as not that enjoyable to read, are things I don't care about in a character like Quentin Coldwater from The Magicians. I think that his annoyingness is something that's kind of interesting and makes him interesting and flawed. And that is an adult book with a male protagonist. And these are YA books with teenage girl protagonists. And I was just struck by that, too. And dealing with the fact that I also had these kind of ingrained prejudice against people from my own, you know, world. And people that I once was, the kind of person that I once was, the age that I once was. I don't know. This is a little ramble because I'm rambling. I've just thought about this so much, and what was supposed to be a funny, lighthearted video, you know, where I was rereading books that I once really liked and laughing about it, turned into an existential crisis about reading. Anyway, I don't know. I would love to know your guys' thoughts. I would love to know, like, if you've had an experience where you know, really identified with the main character and then you reread that book and you were like, I hate this main character, and you had an existential crisis, I would love to know. I'm really interested. Okay, so that's all I have. I'm gonna be doing a reading vlog very soon because I want to do a reading vlog and I think that'll be pretty fun. So that's my plan, is to start doing that now and also just read some stuff that doesn't give me an existential crisis. So yes. Thank you so much for watching.